Our last speaker is State Senator Dick Black. Colonel Black was a JAG officer on the Army General Staff. While working in the Pentagon, he was chief of the Criminal Law Division, responsible for justice throughout the Army. He has advised the Senate Armed Services Committee, prepared executive orders for the President, and testified before Congress. Early in his JAG career, Senator Black, he was the senior prosecutor at Fort Hood, Texas, where he tried rape, murder, and child molestation cases. A good background if you're going into politics. He had also served as a chief defense counsel, supervising 6 attorneys in a major criminal defense practice. Senator Black is a graduate of the Command and General Staff College and the U.S. Army War College. His awards include 3 Legions of Merit and the Purple Heart. Dick Black fought in Vietnam as a Marine Corps officer. He was wounded and his radio men were killed during fierce ground fighting with the 1st Marine Regiment. Lieutenant Black also flew 269 combat missions as a helicopter pilot and crash-landed after machine gun fire tore through his flight controls. Dick Black is currently a state senator representing Virginia's 13th District. He has served for 5 years in the Virginia Senate and 8 years in the House of Delegates. As a senator, he introduced legislation, which is now the law, requiring the state's higher education system to make reforms in the reporting procedures of rape on campuses. Also, Senator Black has been very involved in the legislation regarding forensic rape testing kits. In Virginia, he discovered that there were some 3,000 backlogged rape testing kits in the Virginia system. Because of his legislative initiatives, these kits are finally being processed and utilized. As you might imagine, especially after hearing from him, Senator Dick Black is considered by many to be the most conservative member of the Virginia General Assembly. And since he has some competition, thank heavens, in Virginia for that designation, it's a particular pleasure to welcome him to the podium.
Well, thank you very much. And let me just start by saying, with the republication of the works of Joseph Sobran, I think tremendous thanks need to go to Fran Griffin, who was with him during all of the years that he was doing this and who has followed and perpetuated his legacy. Reading through the book, it is an amazing insight into American culture. And while it has been some time since it was written, it really is very current today. I want to talk a little bit about the danger of a presidency of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Interestingly, Fran and I have chosen one of the same lines out of Sobran's works, where he commented. He said, watching the liberties that he took with his office, a patriotic American can realize how patriotic Romans must have felt when the Emperor Caligula appointed his horse to the highest elective office of consul, something that he did in order to humiliate and to demean the legislators of Rome and to elevate himself and to concentrate power. What is happening in the United States is certainly an example of that same type of thing. So the question, I think, comes up, why resurrect old issues of rape, forcible sex, corruption surrounding Bill Clinton? Because after all, Bill is not running for president, Hillary is. I think it's important that we never forget the co-presidency. You haven't heard much of that during this election campaign. the co-president. They used to brag about it constantly, and now someone has put the word out, don't use the term co-presidency. But there was a New York Times article from July of 2016. It was written by Carl Bernstein, who is an icon of the left, and he made the comment. He said, like it or not, Bill Clinton would be the counselor non peril, the unmatched counselor to a President Hillary Clinton, her most trusted advisor. And then he comments tongue-in-cheek, and with almost no need to communicate by email. He goes on, he says the first Clinton presidency was, to a remarkable extent, a co-presidency. There was no reason to think that with roles reversed, that we will not be in for another co-presidency. I thought it interesting reading through Carl Bernstein's New York Times op-ed that he made what I think was a bit of a Freudian slip when he described Bill as Hillary's inevitable consigliere, which is defined as an advisor, particularly to a crime boss. It was a word popularized by the movie Godfather as a mafia advisor, the consigliere. The Godfather. What could better describe the reign of Bill and Hillary Clinton? Bernstein went on. He said there's no one who could undertake sensitive diplomatic missions for President Hillary Clinton with better credentials, more effectiveness, influence, respect. He already knows almost all the world leaders. He said this part of his role becomes a no-brainer. What he is really talking about when he says that, if you contemplate it, is a super Secretary of State, that Bill Clinton will automatically assume a role superior to that of Secretary of State. Why is this important? The Clintons claim to have been essentially penniless when they left the White House. And in the years since, acquired massive wealth. They claim, modestly, $111 million in personal wealth, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Because the Clinton Foundation, a closely held family foundation, has collected $2 billion. And for those of you who don't think in mathematical terms, this is $2,000 million for someone who is flat broke, leaving the presidency. Now, how was this done? You've got to have something to trade. You've got to have a quid pro quo. Nothing is more tradable than the power of the United States when sold to foreign entities. And this really has been the modus operandi since the Clinton presidency came to an end. Psychologists tell us that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And I think if you look at the past behavior of the 8 years of Clinton reign, then you'll see one of unconstrained corruption, debauchery, and disdain for the American people and the American political system. Everybody knows the names of Jennifer Flowers, Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, Linda Tripp, Monica Lewinsky. They all became famous during the Clinton years. Jennifer Flowers said Bill Clinton gave her $200 to abort their child. Juanita Broderick, if you have seen her on video, I have a career as a prosecutor, and I got to tell you, when I see somebody like that, I tell my criminal folks, we're going to trial. Juanita Broderick is about as credible as any witness that you will ever see in a rape case. She described in great detail how she was called to Bill Clinton's room and thinking that she was going to discuss incidents regarding to the fundraiser that they were doing. And there he forced her down. He bit through her lip. He did not give her a love tweak. He bit through her lip. He forced her down. He's a very heavy, big man, and Juanita Broderick was not a big woman. And he forcibly raped her, violently raped her, and then laid there with him begging, with her begging to have him get off. He was so heavy, she said, that she felt that he was going to break through her clavicle, and then after about 20 minutes he raped her again before getting up, getting himself collected, putting on his sunglasses and commenting smugly as he left the room, "Honey, you better do something about that lip." This was our president. This was the fellow that we put into office. Interestingly, the Clintons did not just stop at having their own sexual foibles, both of them, not just him. But the Clintons used the Internal Revenue Service to audit Bill's accusers. Now, we all know that if you're big financial people, like Donald Trump, for example, you're going to be audited from time to time. They're targeted to audit because that's where the money is. You don't target the little people. But not so under Bill and Hillary. Clinton's paramours, Jennifer Flowers and Liz Ward Grayson, both were audited. Sexual accusers Paula Jones and Juanita Broderick were both audited. What are the odds? What are the odds when ordinary people simply are not audited unless they're reported somehow? Washington Times found that not a single liberal group had been audited during these years when the conservatives were being targeted. And we know that the corruption of the Internal Revenue Service that was begun under the Clintons continued on into the Obama administration. So he really was a launching pad for corruption, which also has afflicted the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Joseph Sobran commented that the Clinton marriage was a union of two ambitious people out to gain as much money and power as they can. It is not a normal marriage. It is a partnership of two people who know so much about one another that they can operate fluidly, and neither one has to worry about the other one breaking ranks because so much is known. Hillary once commented that, she said, "Bill and I have been accused of everything, including murder." She blamed it on a vast right-wing conspiracy. But there are some fairly well-done websites that accumulate what's called the Clinton body count. And the body count records over 50 unusual deaths of people related to Clinton activities. Some of them following some other murder that occurred that was very closely associated with the Clintons, predicted their own deaths before they were killed. A considerable number, a surprising number, I thought, were associated with the alleged Mena Airport drug running scheme in Little Rock, Arkansas, that dogged Clinton when he first ran. This was a massive influx of drugs being brought in by the cartels, and many of the people who were connected with the Clintons and with MENA, with the MENA airport, managed to commit suicide in most unusual ways, like shooting themselves in the back of the head with a shotgun, a rather peculiar way. Other people committed suicide with 2 guns simultaneously. And somehow the autopsies always quickly dismissed it. Oh, obviously, this was a mere suicide. But I will say that there is no other political family, no other politician that I know of in my lifetime who has ever been constantly and incessantly dogged with rumors of murder throughout their entire career. Obama never was. I've never heard of a single allegation of murder that was somehow connected to Obama. None with Nixon, none with Jimmy Carter. Interesting. Think about that. Have you ever thought of anybody, ever heard of anyone who was constantly dogged by rumors of murder? Maybe it was just a fantastic coincidence, but the more coincidences you link together, the more mathematically impossible they become. So it was interesting. There's so many other things. There's Chinagate, the influx, the massive influx of foreign funds to follow, to fund Clinton's reelection scheme. One of the things that sort of stands out was the Buddhist temple fundraiser in 1996, where vice presidential candidate Al Gore went there, raised $167,000 for the DNC. $55,000 of that came from impoverished Buddhist monks and nuns who made the maximum contribution, which was then reimbursed by the general funds of the temple. Obviously illegal, but you don't worry about legality when you're talking about the Clintons. These things are simply brushed aside. From beginning to end, you think about the very beginning of the Clinton White House, where all of the staff moved in, and I recall one of the things that stood out was that they were playing with the red line, the hotline to Moscow. It was to be used by the president to avert a nuclear disaster that might wipe out half of human civilization. And they were clowning around, oh, isn't this funny? We got the red line. It started that way, and it went to the very end. At the very end, the White House was vandalized. The china was stolen by the Clintons. The furniture was stolen by the Clintons. They ran off with it. Some of it was later returned. Maybe it was just accidental. Maybe it wasn't stolen. Maybe they just slipped it into their suitcase by accident. They went on, they vandalized the whole place. I mean, not the Clintons themselves, but their staff. The staff reflects the character of the president very often. And you may recall that from the telephones, they pried the letter W, because George W. Bush was about to become president. They pried and they defaced all of those. They did graffiti in the bathrooms. They did all kinds of things, caused tremendous damage. And the president himself, on the way out, always looking for a quick buck, whether it was renting out the Lincoln bedroom, or what it was. Money is the driving force, because they recognize that from money comes political power. And so he wraps up his days in office with Pardongate. Pardongate. He pardons people, not where he singles out people who have had 30 years of impeccable performance and they've obviously reformed themselves, which is the purpose of pardons. A president should do some pardons. But no, They were drug kingpins and swindlers, and the most notorious was the pardon of Mark Rich, who was a fugitive presently on the FBI's most wanted list, facing potential 300 years in prison. He was out of the country. He had never come under U.S. jurisdiction. And in what is a first for me, and I have done some work in this legal area of pardons, I don't know of anybody else who was pardoned while he was a fugitive from justice in a foreign country. But Bill Clinton, there are no limits for Clinton. There are no boundaries for him like ordinary people have. And afterwards, of course, Mark Rich made hefty contributions to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign and to the Clinton Library. Some people would say, well, Donald Trump, he's been accused of a few things. He made some very nasty remarks that were recorded. I don't think those can be denied. Some things that were foul language and so forth. And now all of a sudden, interestingly, this happens in politics. The last few weeks of the campaign, all of a sudden, all these people are coming out and they're accusing him with things. And I can't tell, which is really the purpose of coming out at the very end, is I can't tell, no one can tell whether there is any veracity to these things. But it is interesting to compare. To my knowledge, Trump has never been accused of anything untoward in all of these years in that realm. Bill Clinton, in 1972, was reported to campus police at Yale University, where he was a law student at the time, that he had sexually assaulted a 22-year-old woman. So the rumors about him don't go back 3 weeks. They go back until the year 1972, before he ever held elective office, while he was still a student. And they have continued unabated, unstopped, until now, even May the 14th, 2016, Washington Times reported Clinton flying on convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express 26 times, on a number of occasions ditching his Secret Service protection in order to have complete secrecy. And the Washington Times said, and I quote, "Sometimes a woman whom federal prosecutors suspect of procuring underage sex victims for Mr. Epstein were along on the ride." So it goes from 1972, that was the first that we have a report, until May 14th of this year. It goes on and on. It is a constant. Clinton, interestingly, Bill Clinton, if he becomes the co-president, which is possible, he was eventually impeached and his law license was suspended and turned in for lying under oath, committing perjury. And it's important to recognize that the only two presidents ever impeached were Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. And the only president, both impeached and credibly accused of rape, was Bill Clinton himself, the possible co-president of the United States. I ran across an article that I found very interesting. Some of you will be familiar with the radical actress and activist Susan Sarandon. Very, very hard left actress. She made the jaw-dropping statement for her that Hillary was more dangerous than Trump. And I think it's interesting to look at the reason why. There's enormous value in war. Joe Sobran observed, most wars by their nature occur between neighbors because that's where they annoy each other. But the U.S. has kept attacking countries far from its own borders, Panama, Somalia, Iraq, Yugoslavia. Hillary, as Secretary of State, for those of you who don't know, the Department of Defense does not create wars, they execute wars. The Department of State / CIA create wars. So as Secretary of State, Hillary inspired the war that has utterly driven Libya into the Stone Age. Libya, which was our #1 ally in the war against terror. Libya, which had the highest per capita income of any of the countries in North Africa. Why did we go in there? We went in there because they had a tremendous store of arms, and Hillary intended to ship those Libyan arms into Syria so she could knock down Syria. And she carried that out very effectively. We have, for many years now, shipped Libyan weapons into Syria to topple them. Hillary has made it clear, now this is the woman who voted for the Iraq War, and she has stated that she intends to topple Syria. Now, why is it that she is so focused on toppling Syria, which is the Arab nation with the greatest women's rights, virtually total freedom for women in Syria, and the greatest religious freedom? A place where I went to in April and experienced religious freedom for the first time since I was a little boy in the United States. And the problem with Syria, too many Christians. The Saudis and the Turks, which have been very generous with the Clinton Foundation, don't like Christians, and they don't want any Christian left in the Middle East. And in a longer run, they frankly do not want Christians anywhere. So we have that ahead of us. The Clinton Foundation acted as a place where those who wanted influence and who wanted to direct American policy were able to make large contributions and direct U.S. forces to make war on countries, to sell American uranium to foreign countries, and so forth. In conclusion, I predict that if we have a Bill and Hillary co-presidency, we will enter the new age of Caligula, an age of debauchery, of murder, of war, and of stunning financial corruption. So I would say, St. Michael, pray for our nation. Thank you very much.